You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, new news out of Washington. And with us today is John Solomon, justthenews.com. John, give us the new news, the breaking news.
Well, first, the United States Supreme Court, it put a dent in the Biden-Harris administration's efforts to court young voters. The United States Supreme Court declined to revive the Biden administration's latest student loan forgiveness plan. Remember, one was struck down. Then Joe Biden just came back and did some more. And the latest one he did was challenged in court. The appeals court decided they can't go forward. And the Supreme Court said, we agree with the appeals court. No free money to those student loan debtors. They got to pay their own fair share. So a big loss in a program that has political implications for the fall election. In Congress, a couple of big threats coming down. Jim Jordan today.
Well, bottom line, so everybody understands it clearly. The Supreme Court says if anybody's going to give money back to the students, it's got to be Congress, not the President of the United States. It says, give the money. It's Congress that's supposed to give the money. So it's back to Congress to make the decision if they give the money back to the students. That's bottom line.
That is the bottom line, and that's the issue that will go back to the appeals court case to be decided. Does this comply with Congress's wishes? It will probably end up exactly where the last Supreme Court case did, which is no, Congress didn't authorize this, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can't do it. That's where we're headed.
And Nancy Pelosi told President Biden he couldn't do it, and he just ignored the Supreme Court, and he ignored Nancy Pelosi because Nancy Pelosi says that's our job to do, not yours, Mr. President.
That is exactly right. She did give him a little bit of a civics lesson a few years ago. He didn't listen, though, and now the Supreme Court is returning to that civics lesson, which is Congress' clause.
My interpretation, to just talk slowly, is that President Biden, even though he was wrong, he was conning some of the people that believed in what he was saying, even though he knew he was not right.
Yeah, listen, he had clear knowledge that this would require an act of Congress. Congress wasn't willing to do it, but he went ahead with it anyways for the political gain. Now the courts are catching up to it, and it's not faring well for him. And also, it's been a disillusion a lot of these students.
I just want all the people out there, there's 1 million people could be listening to us. I just want them to understand what it is.
Yeah, no, you have it exactly right. And again, this still has to go back to the appeals court. This is a temporary ruling, but they're not going to revive it today, which means the court most likely thinks this will end the way the last case did, which is Congress didn't approve it, and therefore Joe Biden can't give it away. And,
now,
that will disillusion.
Nancy Pelosi, some new revelations on January 6th. Give us the new revelations.
Well, remember when the finger-pointing started right after January 6th? How could the Capitol be so insecure? How could it get overrun by a bunch of hooligans who are out there protesting? And Nancy Pelosi kept saying, I have nothing to do with security at the Capitol. That's not my job. Well, we found, and we later learned that she had turned down an offer for the National Guard. Well, we have brand new video footage that was kept from us. First, it wasn't in the HBO documentary about Nancy Pelosi's role on January 6th, even though her daughter shot it. But in this footage, she's escaping the Capitol. They're taking her through an evacuation route. And she declares with absolute clarity that she bears responsibility for not better securing the Capitol that day. She was angry that they were just calling the National Guard now. She said they should have been here to start out the day. They should have been there. Exactly what Donald Trump offered Congress. Congress didn't take him up on it. You can hear Nancy Pelosi acknowledging that as she's walking. She also says very clearly she deserves blame and personal responsibility for what happened there. She says, how many times did members ask, are we prepared? Are we prepared? We were not prepared for the worst. We have totally failed. We've got to take some responsibility. So the Nancy Pelosi who told the American public she had nothing to do with security told her daughter while walking out of the Capitol today she did have that responsibility, and she let the American people down. That video footage is available for everybody to see.
Let me ask you another silly question just to straighten it out. Nancy Pelosi, who is Speaker of the House, is taking responsibility. the real question is, if she's being honest and taking responsibility, who conned her into thinking that everything was okay? Because everything was not okay. Was there a big con game going on against Nancy Pelosi?
Well, listen, one of the things we learned a couple of weeks ago is that her staff, her chief of staff, was briefed the night before that the threat index had gone up, that there was a higher degree of violence the next morning. No adaptation occurred. No security plan was augmented. They went with the plan they had when the threat level was much lower. That is something Nancy Pelosi's own chief of staff was directly involved in communicating. So we know that she knew. I think the bigger issue is, remember, Donald Trump used the National Guard during the 2020 summer riots. The Democrats really chafed to that, and I think Nancy Pelosi wanted to look different than Donald Trump. That's what some of the testimony points to. She didn't like the optics of using National Guard like Trump did, so she opted against it, even though, in the end of the day, as she's walking out of the building, she realized that would have been the better option. The Capitol would have been much more secure. Such an amazing turnabout, and just very important to remind, Nancy Pelosi told the public something very different than what's on this video footage.
John Solomon, I hope the American people get to know the truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you for bringing it into the forefront, and we stay tuned to find out how this thing, how do the British say it, how these things sort themselves out.
Exactly. A lot of sorting to do between now and Election Day.
Thank you so much, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, sir.